Here now with more, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, this is what America lasts and what happens to the world if we have a weak American president. I want to get your general thoughts. You're more of a professor and historian than you were ever a politician. Your take on this, I don't even think you can compare Joe to Neville Chamberlain. Neville Chamberlain looks strong compared to Joe, in my view.
No, I think that's right. I mean, Chamberlain was a very strong political leader who had a strategy. Unfortunately, with a personality like Adolf Hitler, that strategy didn't work. It's very bizarre. You have Biden yesterday saying, yes, Putin is a war criminal. Well, what does that mean? It means nothing. You have Biden saying we're going to really cut them off and make the sanctions work. And then we learn from the Free Beacon in Washington that, in fact, the Biden administration has already promised the Russians that if they can get an Iranian deal, they will waive the sanctions for at least $10 billion of Russian construction companies going into Iran. You go through item after item. It struck me, and I just wrote a newsletter on this, that you had Zelensky talking about an immediate, urgent, now crisis, and you have Biden talking about months and eventually and sooner or later. And you could tell this when Biden spoke 2 nights ago to the Democratic National Committee's fundraiser, and in the entire speech, there's one sentence about Ukraine and Russia, and that sentence is that if we had more green fuels, things would be better. Now, when you can reduce the tragedy that you and I and everyone watching has seen in Ukraine, the viciousness, the war crimes, the brutality, and it gets totally ignored by the President of the United States in a speech, you know that there's something profoundly wrong with the Biden administration. And frankly, whatever's wrong with Biden is 20 times worse with Harris. Harris's performance in Poland was so humiliating to every American, to have her laughing when asked about refugees from Ukraine. I would say Harris should never again be allowed to leave the United States because she is such a continuing embarrassment to the American people, and she brings the United States in disrepute. Nobody in the world thinks this administration can lead. Nobody in the world is going to rely on the guarantee of Joe Biden, who has consistently lied about Afghanistan, has lied about Ukraine. It's truly historically a dangerous moment for the United States and, frankly, for the entire human race.
They're not even serious. I mean, maybe you can make sense of why they brought in the TikTok influencers into the White House with pre-screened questions. Basically, they're propagandists. Maybe you can explain what Jen Psaki couldn't explain, and that's the logic behind giving Ukraine drones and javelins and Stinger missiles, but they won't let Poland give them the MiGs that they have. And if you can extrapolate out the meaning of AOC's comments, I'd probably give you the gold star for being a genius, because it makes no sense to me.
Well, no, wait, you just threw 3 very different questions at me. Let me start with I think the whole thing about MiG-29s is nuts. If we're going to put in anti-aircraft missiles to shoot down Russian aircraft, if we're going to give them equipment to kill Russian tanks, the fact that we allow Ukrainian pilots to fly MiG-29s out of Poland or Germany or wherever they come from strikes me as a non-issue. Why would you allow Putin to define what you're allowed to do, which is exactly what Joe Biden did? And I think that there's no rational difference. In terms of AOC, look, her version of climate change is a religious experience. It has nothing to do with reality, has nothing to do with facts. And as a religious fanatic in her own right, she can say anything she wants to because it has to be true, because it's what her religion told her to say. The fact that it's not true factually makes no sense to normal people. And in fact, Native Americans are being punished like everyone else by having to pay vastly too much for gasoline and oil and natural gas because of the policies of Joe Biden. So in a sense, this administration is punishing Native Americans, not protecting them and helping them. I think that's how I would frame that.
We could look to the past. You're the historian. We watched Ronald Reagan. He never put a single American foot on the ground when the former Soviet Union went into Afghanistan, but he did provide them Stinger missiles, and those Stinger missiles to the Mujahideen made all the difference. He did provide the freedom fighters, the Contras in Nicaragua, the weaponry that they needed. That proved successful. Then you got the Trump doctrine, which took out the caliphate that grew under Biden and Obama. He just bombed the living hell out of them. Or took out Soleimani with the same principle, took out Baghdadi and associates, no American boots on the ground, and took out the al-Qaeda leader in Yemen. I think we can learn both from Trump and we can learn from Reagan how to do this and win without risking American lives. Your thought?
Sure. Well, no, absolutely. The thing that's frustrating about this administration, whether it's fighting inflation at home or dealing with crime or dealing with foreign dangers, is we know what works. We've lived through it. We lived through it for 8 years with Ronald Reagan. We lived through it for 4 years with Donald Trump. If the price of oil went back to where it was under Trump, we would strip Putin of 2/3 of his daily income. We would cripple him automatically by doing that. The very fact that Biden would rather buy gasoline and oil from Venezuela, which is a dictatorship, Iran, which is a dictatorship, Saudi Arabia is a dictatorship, they're okay to Joe Biden. But now Texas, Oklahoma, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Dakota, they're really dangerous places. You'd have to say, by any legitimate standard, these people are crazy. This is not about politics. This is not about normal behavior. They're nuts. They're out of touch with reality. The world doesn't work the way they think it's going to. And frankly, I hope that the new Republican Congress in January will look very deeply at, for example, how wrong our intelligence community's been, how wrong Milley's been as the worst chairman of the Joint Chiefs in American history. Remember, he was wrong about Afghanistan, and then he turned around and said the Russians would be in Kyiv in 3 days. He and Putin apparently had the same timetable. The Ukrainians didn't know they were supposed to obey him. So the Russians still aren't in Kyiv. Now, that should worry all of us, because we have 17 intelligence systems. We spend billions and billions, tens of billions of dollars, and they're wrong. Now, this should lead to really far more than just Joe Biden, fundamental reform of the American system so it works again.
All right, Speaker Gingrich, always great to have you. Thank you, sir. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.